I was flattered when my wife asked if I could build a kitchen table for our family. She said she wanted a very light colored wood, open grain pattern, a few knots to give it character, and a zero gloss finish. I said, well, that all sounds great for a hack like me. I don't know what we're going to do about those nice table legs though. Don't worry, I'll show you how I took care of that. Alright, let's get to it. Don't go yet, I promise the video quality will get better. I used builder grade 2x10s, and the first step of course was to joint the edges. I don't have a nice joiner, or any joiner actually, so I'm using a joining sled and a glue line rip blade on the table saw. This was slow going on a weak table saw like mine, but it still got the job done just fine. There are a lot of really great videos on how to do jointing like this, so I'm going to link to a few down in the description. This was my first time using biscuits, and it really does help with the alignment later on. I don't have bar clamps big enough to clamp up a 42-inch wide table, so I'm using everybody's favorite fastener, the pocket screw. Spoiler alert, they work really well. For the glue up, nothing really fancy there, just that this 1.5-inch pine starts to get really heavy. And in go the pocket screws to hold it all together while the glue dries. Here I'm putting the last two sections together and it's starting to actually look like a tabletop. And here comes my favorite customer now. Sorry babe, I can't make eye contact. When the glue is wet, you gotta keep on jamming. This is the router bit I used to put the edge profile on the table. It's pretty big, it's the biggest one I've ever used, but it did a great job. I did at least 2 passes with that router bit, maybe even more, I don't remember, but I know it was at least 2. Yep, definitely heavy. Alright, time for some finish. I used a 2-part wood bleach. Most brands, they recommend that you mix the two together and then use it right away. This particular brand recommends that you put on the part A and then come right behind it with the part B. So this is part A, of course, and both parts are really thin. They have the consistency of about like water. And I'm just using a foam brush and putting it on nice and thick. And now for part B of the 2-part wood bleach. The change is pretty dramatic and quick. As soon as you start putting the second part on, you can really see the wood tone start to change. It will continue to get lighter for the next 30 minutes or so as the chemical reaction runs its course. But after a while, cleanup is super easy because the chemicals just slowly evaporate. So overnight it was completely dry and I can move on to the top coat. But first we sand. And I also sanded before the wood bleach. I think I sanded up to 220. After sanding comes some vacuuming to remove all the sanding dust. And then after that I hit it with a tack rag before starting the clear coat. I did 3 coats of General Finishes flat out flat water-based clear coat, sanding 220 in between. After that, the tabletop was done. A few months later, I figured out the white balance settings on my camera, and then I got to work on the table base. Nothing fancy about the side aprons here. Now, I don't own a lathe, which means I make table legs the same way a college student makes homemade pizza. Delicious. Okay, time out. I also do not own a hollow chisel mortiser, a Festool domino, or a panther router. I thought long and hard about how I'm going to join the aprons to the table legs. I didn't want to buy expensive tools that I've never used, and I didn't want to hand cut mortise and tenons because I've never done that either. But I do have a Kreg jig. No, not pocket holes. I would never use pocket hole screws to join aprons and legs on a table this size. Stay with me. What if we use the Kreg jig as a doweling jig? Check it out. First step, take all the guides off of your Kreg jig, and then take the stop collar off your Kreg drill bit. Then grab a really long 3/8 inch drill bit. Place a piece of scrap under your apron so you get the right amount of reveal that you want. Set the Kreg jig on the edge of the apron and then insert the drill bit. That way you know how big of a spacer block you're going to need, and also just how deep the drill bit's going to go for the dowel. Don't forget to set the stop collar once you know how deep you want your drill bit to go. Use that same setting on the stop collar to mark and cut some 3/8 inch dowels. Ignore these 2x4s for a minute, they're just clamping culls. Clamp the apron tightly to the table leg because we're going to drill the hole for both at the same time. Screw down the pocket hole jig in place and then start drilling. Here's another view of the same process. Once you have your holes drilled, the glue up is pretty standard. You might want to sand your dowels a little bit, because once they have glue all over them, they can get kind of sticky and it can be difficult to drive them all the way in. Once the glue has set up, you can remove your clamps and trim the dowels flush with your Harbor Freight Ryoba saw. After the legs and aprons were assembled, I put on some primer and then a coat of paint. After that, it was time to bring it inside and attach the tabletop. Now the tabletop was super heavy, and the only way I could get it inside was to enlist the help of 2 utes.
2 what?
Once I had it perfectly centered, I attached it with more pocket hole screws. And that's it! I really hope you enjoyed this, and thanks so much for watching. Leave a comment letting me know what you think, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks so much, everybody.